So what could potentially surprise in Best Original Screenplay? Hi, it's Brian. This is the awards contender, and in today's video, I'm giving you my early Oscar predictions for Best Original Screenplay. Here we go. So as I talked about in my first early Oscar predictions video of the season on Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Screenplay isn't quite as competitive as the other writing category. Best Adapted Screenplay is stacked, whereas Best Original Screenplay is a little more up in the air. Like, there's potential for a couple movies that might not show up anywhere else in the top 8 categories to sneak in to Best Original Screenplay this year, because we don't have a ton of huge Best Picture contenders fighting over those 5 slots. Although, let's be honest, there's going to be at least 3 movies that get into Best Original Screenplay that are going to show up in Best Picture. Now, as of this moment, I would say there are 4 films that are pretty close to locks for Best Original Screenplay. I'm not going to say all 4 of them are 100% guaranteed going to get in on Oscar nominations morning, but their odds are pretty good. Starting with the film that right now I think is going to win the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, and that's The Holdovers, written by David Hemmingson. This was one of my 3 favorite movies I saw at the Telluride Film Festival a few weeks ago. I think the Academy is going to eat this movie up. I think they're going to love it. It has a very good chance of getting into Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Paul Giamatti, Best Supporting Actress for Divine Joy Randolph, and even, as I'll talk about in a few days, the more I think about it, the young Dominic Sessa has a chance of getting into Best Supporting Actor. Best Picture is going to be very competitive next year between like Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Killers of the Flower Moon. But one thing David Hemmingson has going for him, the screenwriter of The Holdovers, is that none of those 3 movies are going to show up in original screenplay. They are all adapted screenplay. So not to say that Hemmingson won't have any competition in original screenplay, but like many months out, I'm feeling pretty good about his chances of winning. Like, there's going to be a couple other films I'm going to talk about here that are probably going to get into Best Picture, some acting categories, but The Holdovers is very much like a writer's film. It's beautifully written, and you can feel that all the way through the movie. Like, The Holdovers definitely starts and ends with that screenplay. So yeah, this is definitely getting in. Number 2 is Barbie, written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. This, I would say, is The Holdovers' biggest threat to win. Barbie is a film that took the world by storm in 2023. And if there's one place outside of the tech categories that they could give it a win, original screenplay does make sense. I mean, it's such a unique vision from Greta Gerwig, and I'm not sure if she gets into director. I really hope she does. I think the film will get into Best Picture and at least one acting category, Ryan Gosling for Best Supporting Actor, but I don't think Barbie can win in any other top category. I mean, Ryan Gosling would be like an all-timer victory, and he has been nominated twice before, as I'll talk about in the next video. I mean, as of this moment, I still think it's The Holdovers to lose here, but Barbie is definitely getting in as long as the Academy recognizes Barbie as an original screenplay. As I talked about in my adapted screenplay Oscar predictions video, I'm not entirely sure the Academy will consider it original. I feel like at the end of the day, Warner Brothers can campaign this movie for months on end for Best Original Screenplay. It might show up in that category at most of the precursors, but on Oscar nominations morning, we're all surprised, not really, when it does show up in adapted, the much more competitive writing category this year. As I said before, I feel like if Whiplash shows up in adapted, like, are they going to consider Barbie original? I think in adapted screenplay, Barbie is in like 4th or 5th place to win, whereas in original, it will be in 2nd place for sure. So, I mean, I'm hoping it gets into original. I think it is an original screenplay that just happens to be based on some existing IP, but the Academy might not see it that way. So at the end of this video, I will have an alternate 6th place choice just in case Barbie does end up going adapted. But if the Academy recognizes Barbie as original, it's for sure 100% getting in and has a chance to win at the Academy Awards. Number 3 is Maestro, written by Bradley Cooper and Josh Singer. I have not seen Maestro yet. It did not play at Telluride, but I can't wait to check it out. I'm hearing amazing things. All the screenings that is played at some of the festivals, all the critics I look up to really admire this film. And Bradley Cooper is beloved by the Academy. He's had so many nominations by now. I feel like Maestro is likely to get into Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, maybe Best Director. I feel like if it makes it into all of those, it's going to show up in original screenplay. Now you might ask yourself, like, how is this original screenplay? Isn't that based on real people? There is this weird rule that as long as it's not based on a book, even if it's about like a real person who existed, that is usually considered original screenplay. Like if Christopher Nolan had based Oppenheimer on not a specific work of nonfiction, I think Oppenheimer could have gone original, and then he would likely win his Academy Award, but because it is based on a specific book, it goes into adapted screenplay. But Maestro is not based on any specific nonfiction work, so it's considered original. I do think that's going to get into original screenplay. I cannot see it missing. If it gets into picture, actor, actress, it gets a lot of love from the Academy. I do think that's going to make it in as well. And then the number 4 slot is for my favorite movie of 2023 that I saw at the Sundance Film Festival last January, Past Lives, written and directed by Celine Song. I'm not going to call this one like a lock at this point. We don't know how well Past Lives is going to do during award season. I've been very nervous, honestly, the last few weeks. Like, the movie played at Sundance, did really well, got a lot of buzz throughout the early months of 2023, and then it opened in June to rave reviews, but it didn't make a lot of money at the box office, and I don't feel like I've heard much about Past Lives in the last few months, and I'm like, I don't know, guys, I'm a little nervous about like Past Lives. I'm like crossing my fingers it at the very least gets into Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Actress for Greta Lee. Best Actress is so competitive this year, as I'll talk about in an upcoming video. I have not seen Greta Lee's name in the top 5 on any of the major Oscar prediction websites. On many of them, she's like in 7th or 8th place. And I'm just gonna like stick to my guns on that one. Like, I think Greta Lee is so brilliant in Past Lives. Like, if there can just be 1 or 2 pushes in the weeks leading up to the Oscar nominations, like, she just needs a couple big precursor nominations. I mean, I think it's very well possible she will miss, and I will be probably crying when I hear that news on Oscar nominations morning. But right now, in October, I'm like, come on, Greta Lee. Now, if there's one place Past Lives, I think, is almost near guaranteed to be nominated at the Oscars, it's Best Original Screenplay. I think even if the unthinkable happened and Past Lives, for whatever reason, missed Picture and Actress, I still think it makes it into Original Screenplay. Like, if Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things, Oppenheimer were all original, then I'd be nervous. Then I'd be like, uh-oh. But because there's not as much competition in this writing category, I think Past Lives has to make it in. It's gotten too many rave reviews. Everybody who sees this movie loves it. I'm going to rank it as the best film of the year, and it's only October. So I'm like, that would be disappointing to me if that's the only category it shows up in. But like, I mean, this movie needs to be in the history books an Academy Award nominee at the very least. And so I'm thinking original screenplay is almost 100%. Like, I'm not usually very profane on this YouTube channel, but if Past Lives is completely ignored on Oscar nominations morning, you're gonna hear me saying some things during the live reaction, let me tell you. All right, so those 4 films I'm thinking are pretty close to being locks. The only slot available here is that 5th slot. Like, I feel like there's 7, 8 other movies kind of contending for that 5th slot, which I'm going to talk about now. One option is May December. This is another acclaimed film of the year I have not seen yet. I feel like May December could be one of those movies that doesn't quite make it into picture, director, or actress for Natalie Portman, but does get into like a supporting category and gets into original screenplay. I feel like it's around 5th place, like it's 6th, 7th place, somewhere in there. Like May, December is probably going to be close. It'll depend on how much passion there is for the film overall going into award season. I am very excited to check that one out. I am a huge fan of Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore, Todd Haynes. Like, it's definitely one of my top 2 or 3 most anticipated films in the coming months for sure. I saw The Bike Riders on a couple lists. I don't think The Bike Riders is going to place in any Oscar category. I mean, the only one it could maybe have a chance, I think, is Jodie Comer for Best Supporting Actress. Best Supporting Actress is like so up in the air right now. There's not really a front runner. Like in October, we're not really sure what's going to happen with that category. I do think Jodie Comer's performance in The Bike Riders is exquisite, and so I would love to see her get in there. Can this movie get into original screenplay? First of all, what kind of confuses me is that at the Telluride Q&A where I saw The Bike Riders, Jeff Nichols, the director, talked about how he read this book, The Bike Riders, in the early 2000s, and it made him want to make the movie. So it sounds like the movie is based on that book. Why is that not adapted? Why is it original? That's kind of confusing to me. I don't know. But Jeff Nichols has never been nominated for an Academy Award. That's why his name, I think, has been circulating a little bit. This would be a cool moment to reward him. I would not be mad if he made it in. I just don't think that's going to happen right now. I've heard a lot of great things about Dream Scenario starring Nicolas Cage. It is probably one of the most original screenplays we're getting in 2023. I haven't seen it yet, but it got some really strong reviews out of Toronto, and I just don't know if that movie is going to be big enough. It might be a case where it could totally get in, but it's just not being seen by enough people. That might be the case with Dream Scenario. So I'm not predicting it right now, although I am excited to check it out. One of my 10 favorite films of 2023 is Fair Play, which just premiered on Netflix a few days ago. I absolutely adore this film. I think it's such a strong, confident debut from Chloe Dumont, and I would love to see her get into original screenplay. It's just tricky, man. I don't know if come December, January, February, people are going to be talking about Fair Play. I mean, it's doing well on Netflix right now, but will people be keeping it in the mix into award season? I don't think so. As much as I love this movie, the performances, the direction, the writing, I don't think it's going to be nominated at the Oscars. One movie that's kind of a question mark right now is The Iron Claw, which just had its trailer premiere a few days ago and is dropping into theaters in late December, starring Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White. It's an A24 release coming out at the very end of the year. Like, could The Iron Claw be a bigger Oscar contender than we're expecting? Like, could this movie potentially get into supporting actor for Jeremy Allen White, maybe Best Picture, original screenplay? It's totally possible. Nobody's really seen it yet, so it's kind of up in the air. I don't know. It didn't play at any of the major fall festivals, at least thus far. I thought the trailer was excellent, and so we'll see on that one. I mean, it's definitely in the conversation. Another big question mark is Napoleon. Could that get into original screenplay? Like, am I the only one super confused about this movie right now? Like, it's coming out in a few weeks, and I've seen almost no marketing for it. Like, it's a very kind of quiet lead up to this movie's release, like a big epic film starring Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Ridley Scott. Like, I've seen almost nothing for this movie. Is it still coming out in November? I haven't heard much. So I don't know. Like, Napoleon, you would think would be a big top 5 Oscar contender movie in some respects. Like, it's Joaquin Phoenix and Ridley Scott, for God's sake, but I don't know. Like maybe that movie can get in. Like, I'm not feeling really good about Napoleon right now. Like, it might just be this year's The Last Duel, another film from Ridley Scott, a movie that just kind of comes and goes and gets some respectable reviews, but doesn't really play a role during award season. That might be the case with Napoleon. There's Rustin, which is also a film based on real people, real events, but is not based on a specific book. And walking out of that film, I thought, this one could get into Best Actor for Coleman Domingo and Best Original Screenplay. But the more I've thought about that movie ever since, like, it's kind of just an okay film with a very strong lead performance. I think at the end of the day, if Rustin shows up at the Oscars, it's going to be one of those movies that just gets into Best Actor for Domingo and nowhere else. I really don't think there's going to be enough enthusiasm for that film to get it into Best Original Screenplay. Like, I just don't see that happening. Asteroid City has shown up on some lists. That one would not surprise me. Like, if there was not much talk about Asteroid City throughout most of award season, and then it takes the 5th place slot in Best Original Screenplay on Oscar nominations morning, like, they have nominated Wes Anderson a few times before, and I wasn't a big fan of that movie. I found it disappointing, but I know a lot of people really like it or love it, so Asteroid City, of many of these titles I'm talking about, I would consider that around 6th, 7th place. Like, it's definitely one of those movies enough people adore that it gets into one category at the Oscars, Best Original Screenplay. And then Elemental, the big Pixar release from last summer, has shown up on some lists as well. A lot of Pixar movies throughout the years has gotten into the writing categories. I'm thinking Toy Story, The Incredibles, Wall-E. I'm sure there's a few more, but I just don't think there's going to be enough enthusiasm for Elemental to get it in there. I do think it's probably going to get into Best Animated Feature, but I think that's going to be it for Elemental. Okay, so that takes me to my final 3 contenders fighting it out for that 5th place slot, starting with Anatomy of a Fall. I saw this film at Telluride. It is brilliant. It is so well acted, directed, and it's very much a writer's film. There's a lot of dialogue. There are some nice twists and turns throughout that movie, and it's very unpredictable. You never really know where it's going, and so I could see that film getting into original screenplay. I do think Anatomy of a Fall will get into Best Picture, Best Actress, and potentially Best Director. Like, watch out for Best Director. It could get in there too. I feel like even if Anatomy of a Fall misses Best Director, if it can get into Best Picture and Best Actress, I feel like original screenplay might happen. If Anatomy of a Fall was based on a book and went into adapted, I don't know if it could make it into that category. But original screenplay is open enough. Like, I feel like Anatomy of a Fall has a pretty good shot of getting into original screenplay. And then what about Air, the film from Ben Affleck, starring Matt Damon and Viola Davis? I'm really curious to see how well Air will do during the next award season. Like, Air could be one of those movies that is just completely ignored. It might be kind of forgotten about, slept on by the time we get to January, February. But, you know, never forget, Everything Everywhere All at Once came out at the very beginning of 2022, and that film hung on and did really well. And Air is a fantastic movie. I really enjoyed it. It's going to do really well, like, in the screener pile. It's got a lot of actors we adore who are doing excellent work in that movie. I do think it's possible Air could get into Best Picture, maybe an acting category, like maybe Viola Davis for Best Supporting Actress, and then it shows up in Original Screenplay. It gets that 5th place slot. The more I think about it, like, the more I think about Air, I'm like, as long as it hangs on and gets into some of the precursors, like, it's very likely to get into Original Screenplay. Like, even if the movie didn't place anywhere else, I think it could still get in. So I'm like really close to predicting Air to get in. I think that's very likely to happen, but I'm going to do something really stupid. I'm going to say it now. This is kind of dumb because I am going to predict at this moment with my heart and not with my head. I'm going to predict that the 5th place slot is Saltburn, written by Emerald Fennell. Saltburn was my favorite film I saw at Telluride. I have not stopped thinking about this movie since, and I've seen a lot of people really, really love this movie. I've seen so much hype and enthusiasm. It's getting a theatrical release, I think Thanksgiving weekend. And the cast is amazing in this, the direction is great, the cinematography, all is fantastic, and everything in Saltburn hangs on that bizarre, brilliant, spectacular screenplay by Emerald Fennell that I just cannot imagine being ignored. Like, I feel like Saltburn probably doesn't get into Best Picture, it might get into an acting category. I feel like Saltburn being ignored 100% on Oscar nominations morning is going to feel very wrong. And so it's kind of a no guts, no glory pick right now. I do think Air and Anatomy of a Fall have better chances in a way of getting in over Saltburn. There's going to be a lot of Academy members who do not go with Saltburn. I mean, this film goes to some crazy, shocking places in that second hour. I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if Saltburn is going to show up at the Oscars, but right now, I'm just gonna go with my heart. I just loved this movie so much. And the one other piece that I feel like, well, she could get in because her debut feature, Promising Young Woman, won Emerald Fennell the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay 3 years ago. And so I feel like if she could win for Promising Young Woman, which is also kind of out there, like, why would she not get in for Saltburn, which is getting a theatrical release at the end of the year, and some people don't like it, but a lot of people like myself really, really love it. So I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think she can get in. I think with original screenplay not being quite as competitive as adapted, there is room for Emerald Fennell. Man, how cool would it be on Oscar nominations morning to see both Past Lives and Saltburn show up in original screenplay? I would be so happy. You will see lots and lots of smiles on my face that morning in my live reaction video. Again, this is not a super confident pick. It is more a no guts, no glory choice from the heart, but I am gonna go with Saltburn. Here are my 5 early Oscar predictions for Best Original Screenplay. The Holdovers, written by David Hemmingson. Barbie, written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. Maestro, written by Bradley Cooper and Josh Singer. Past Lives, written by Celine Song. And Saltburn, written by Emerald Fennell. And if Barbie shows up in adapted screenplay, my alternate here is Anatomy of a Fall, written by Justine Triet and Arthur Harari. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think is going to be Oscar nominated next year for Best Original Screenplay? And stay tuned for my Best Supporting Actor early Oscar predictions in the days to come. We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.